Welcome one, welcome all to the inaugural show of Modern Symposium. My name is Nick Camholes.
And I'm Richie Mears.
So, first things first, you may be wondering what the hell a modern symposium is. Well, a symposium was a drinking party held in the times of ancient Greece where people would discuss questions of ethics, philosophy, love, or politics, as made famous by Plato's work, also titled Symposium. They'd have some beverages, debate pressing issues of the time, which, ironically enough, are still pressing issues today. To this day, we still find ourselves asking the same big questions as the philosophers of antiquity. Where are we going? How did we get here? How do we build the just city? How do we best show love to one another? Over the past year or so, Richie and I would find ourselves in the corners of parties discussing these same topics. So, as many others before us have concluded, we decided we wanted to start a podcast. Our goal is to try and stir these types of conversations and to hopefully get other people talking along these high minded lines. We want to start a dialogue to encourage deep reflection and forward thinking. Richie, you got anything to add about our mission statement before we just jump into it?
I think it's important to clarify our purpose is to open-mindedly explore ideas in a search for truth. There's a quote I like by Henry Ford. He once said, "Whenever two people always agree, one of them is unnecessary." And as you'll see if you watch this podcast, there are many topics where Nick and I tend to agree, and there's a lot more which we tend to strongly disagree. One thing we do both agree on is that in order to efficiently address the problems and the tensions of our modern age, it's necessary that open-ended discourse and critical thinking be applied in an attempt to find some common ground. In the digital age, too much of the media we consume aims to provoke fear and outrage, as this is what gets our attention most effectively. Our mission is to expand these conflicting ideas into long-form discussions where we can think critically about the pressing issues of our time without the hostility often associated with debates of controversial subjects. And with that being
Sound
said, um, Nick, anything on your mind to start it off?
Yeah, I came across this on TikTok literally earlier today. Uh, it's a graph and it shows by 21 years old, you've lived half of your life perceptually, that our brain's internal clock experiences novel things slowly, but routine accelerates your experiences. You know, that's something that I've kind of been thinking about a lot recently. A couple of years ago, I remember having a talk with my dad. I think I was like a sophomore in college at the time. I'm like, Dad, high school felt like it flew by so fast, and college is like going by even quicker, And I'm like, does it ever slow down? Does time like, do you ever feel like things slow down? And he looks at me and he goes, Nick, every year goes by faster than the last. And
Yeah.
that's a crazy, crazy thing to realize.
Now that does make a lot of sense. My dad actually said something similar as well, where just yeah, exactly. My dad was asking me, asking about, when you were in elementary school, does that feel like it was a long time compared to like high school and college? And I was in college at the time, and I was like, yeah, it kind of does actually. He's like, yeah, for some reason I look back and it just seems like I was in elementary school forever. And then high school seems like it was super quick. College was like a blink of the eye. And the ever since it's gone by quicker and quicker, which it kind of does make sense as far as the way the mind works, I guess, is like, all right, as you well, one, I assume you probably get busier as you get older, more responsibility, less time. One crazy stat kind of has to do with this is I don't know if you've seen these charts, similar charts, but they show the people you spend the most time with throughout your life, and it's a
Oh,
graph in
dude,
the same
those are
way
so good.
where you're like it shows the one thing like the average person will spend however many hours per year with their parents from age like from the time they're born until maybe
Like
age 18 or
18, right?
20, and then it goes down dramatically where by the time you reach age 22 you spent 90% of the time with your parents that you will throughout your entire life, which is
That
kind of crazy. We've got
that
about
that
less
that
than
stat
10%.
that stat fucked me up, dude. Like
Yeah, same.
after college, I think I had seen that, and I was thinking about moving out, and I'm like, dude, if I move out, like that's it.
Right, and it
all,
it
all of my
it really
time with
makes
my
sense.
parents has gone. Like, okay, not
I
all of
mean,
it, but like the vast, vast majority.
Yeah, I mean, I probably see my parents once every 2 to 3 weeks at
Right.
max, compared to, that's one out of every, when I live with them, every 21 times I would see them if it's 3 weeks. So it does make a lot of sense. And then obviously, you know, the older you get, you spend more time with your kids and your wife and all of that. But another one too was your friends. You barely spend any time with your friends once you after your age, 30 or so on average.
Hmm.
So it is kind of a crazy thing to think about when you think about the long term, full lifespan versus most of the time you're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow or next week versus like, all right, if you really want to decide what's more important, thinking about it in the long term, you might change your
And
mind.
routine is like the killer of the mind, in my opinion. Like, you
I
can
can see that.
you can hone your skills in routine, obviously, but if you don't go out and experience new things, and that's kind of what this tweet was saying, it's like you can change this process
Right.
though by doing novel things, going out, trying new things, novel experiences. That's what slows down your perception of time, is what they're saying. So they're saying go out, try things, do something
Yeah,
different.
definitely makes a lot of sense because if you think about it, like if I think back the last 3 years, I couldn't really differentiate one day from another on most days. If you spend 5 days a week, pretty much Truman Show, or not Truman Show, what's it? What's the movie I'm thinking of? Groundhog Day, where you
Yeah,
wake up and go to work, and then it's the same thing every day. Same thing for lunch, come home, do the same thing, go to bed about the same time, wake up. It's like, all right, looking back over the last 3.5, 4 years, does it seem like 3.5, 4 years? Absolutely not. It seems
no.
like, 2/7 of that, because really that's what it was. It was the whatever days during the weekends or on vacations that
And
you're
then,
actually
okay,
able to
all
go do
right, on your
something.
days off, how much different things are you doing on your days off? This summer, on my days off, I've done like one of two things. I went out and golfed, or I've like went somewhere to like a park somewhere and like read my book.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, exactly. Yeah. Like, I mean, you're not really doing anything particularly novel. I mean, you might do some new things within the same 50 miles of where you live, but I mean, you're not getting up and traveling, maybe once in a while, but you're not getting up and traveling because what's the point? You got to be back in 48 hours to go back
But
and do the same thing.
it
So,
doesn't even have to be like climb this mountain that you haven't climbed. It's like cook tandoori chicken for dinner. You ever cooked tandoori chicken for dinner, Richie?
no, yeah, I've never
No,
cooked at all.
you've never cooked at all.
Frozen pizzas, if that counts.
No, you don't know how to cook.
No, I'm not. I know the easy things. I know eggs.
Can you make like
Uh,
chicken and like rice?
I probably could, but I'm a little scared to. See, I can make a steak because you can't undercook the steak. Chicken, you undercook it, you got a whole bunch of problems, so I'm not going to risk it.
Does Meg cook a shit ton, or do you guys just
Yeah,
eat
she's
out all the
she's
time?
no, she's a real good cook. She
Oh,
she
okay.
prefers it if she cooks because I've tried cooking a few times, didn't go well.
Well, all right. Well, you got to learn how to cook. I'll tell you
No,
that
that's one of the
much.
things on my list. That's one of the things on my list. But
All
like
right,
you said,
try
I mean,
something new. Learn how to cook
there you
some
go.
chicken
Yeah,
breast, dude.
that's gonna be
There you,
my new novel experience, just learning how to cook some mac and cheese.
dude. Cooking is so easy. You just read the instructions and like do it.
Yeah,
It's
no, I mean,
dude.
I probably could figure it out. I don't make the
Baking
attempt very often.
chicken. You look up like a chicken recipe. It probably says like put in some like light oil, throw it in the oven for 30 minutes. So easy.
True. I do
It's
now
like a
have
frozen
so when I
pizza. It's like a
when I
frozen.
first started trying to cook, I didn't have the proper tools. So like I didn't have the thermometer. So it would say, heat the chicken to this temperature. I didn't know, so I was eyeballing it. Now I have all the proper tools, so I don't really have an excuse anymore.
Basically, the whole idea of cooking is cook it until you want to eat it, until it looks tasty.
All right. That might be easier said than done, but I'll give it a shot. Now I can start with the small stuff. Like I can make some like a pretty good omelet, I can make easy stuff. Stuff that you can't really screw up, I can do. Stuff that you can screw up, I probably can do, but I'm not willing to risk it when I got someone who actually knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, new novel experience. Go out and do yoga on the beach.
Yeah, I mean,
Like there's so many things that you just start listing things. I've never done that. Just go out and try it, you know?
Yeah, right. No, I mean, yeah, you're definitely right about that. There's a ton of things. I mean, there's more than enough things to try, even if you're not traveling, even just wherever you are. But sometimes it's even just the, going into the weekend, it's like, all right, you, after a long week at work, brain capacity is
Right.
low. You kind of just want to go have some beers and do the same thing you always do. And then next thing you know, years have gone by and you've done that same thing all the
Well,
time.
well, let me jump into Friday night, right? You're getting off work, you're tired, you just worked a long week. You just want to have a couple beers, chill, relax. Makes sense. Everyone wants to do that. The system of like the 40-hour work week, 5 days a week, is designed to keep you locked into that cycle of, oh, work, 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 2 days off, but like, work's coming back up. So I'm just gonna like chill. And it keeps you like locked and consuming like things instead of going out and producing things.
That, yeah, I definitely think that's true to a degree, but it's also, it's tough to even, I guess when you say all right, here's a follow-up question on that. I like this discussion. When you say it's designed that way, in what way? Who's designing it that way? How did we get to that where that's, is there a guy sitting back there like, all right, we got all of these they're all a bunch of lab rats and they think they have the freedom to do what they want on the weekends. Realistically, we designed it so they have the perfect amount of time to think that they're free, but really it's just enough so that they don't really have time to do anything until they get back to work. I mean, is what is the reason that they wouldn't want you to go do yoga on the beach on Saturday,
Consumption, basically. Well, see, you asked two different questions. The first question you asked is who designed that? I said it was a design. You asked who designed it.
Okay.
Very fair question, which I can't really answer. There's not one person, there's not 10. There's not like a secret enclave of megalomaniac billionaires who sit around and think about how they can keep the common man down. That's not really how it is. How it actually is, it's that it's thousands and thousands of people all deciding on similar concepts of, all right, how do I make my worker productivity the best, right? And then
Right.
common practices become adopted, like if someone has a better builds a better mousetrap, like people will adjust over time. But it is who makes the decisions. It's not me and you.
No, it's
It's it's
definitely
it's
not, but
it's
is
the
it just
people who own everything. And again,
is
that
it
sounds vague. That sounds like I'm like saying there's Illuminati, that there's backdoor groups of people, and that's probably not the case.
so no, I think I get what you mean. I would even argue that even the people who do own the things, even the billionaires, I don't really think that they have much of a say in it either.
No, they
Um,
no right,
it,
right,
it's because if they don't, if they don't, okay, so like what it used to be back in the 1910s and in the 1920s was it was like 7 days a week.
right. Even
You were starting to
worse.
work when you were 8 years old, going to work on the railroads or whatever, and that's obviously we've come a long way from that. Government laws,
We
where
had the people had to take that power back, though. That's
right, but
why
even in
that's
those
why that's
days,
why they're trying to bust unions and stuff.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's the big
Roosevelt trust
the
busters and all that. But even those days, it wasn't so much. I mean, that might be a bad example because that was when there were a lot of real monopolies like Rockefeller and Carnegie.
right.
But when it comes down to it, and more so now, and since then, even the guy who is the billionaire at the top doesn't really have full say over like, okay,
He
I'm gonna
doesn't. He
make
doesn't.
my guys work 40 hours a week. He could be the nicest. I mean, some of the tech companies are trying to do this where they're saying, all right, we're going to do 4 days a week instead of five, or we're going to have, a certain amount of mandatory mental health days or something like that, where they can do that if they can get away with it. For most of recent history, the past 100 years, I don't think that even if, the Waltons, the family that owns Walmart, even if they said, oh, you know what, we really care about our workers, we're going to give them a day off, an extra day off per week, a paid day, or whatever they would want to do. I don't think that they have that choice either, because the way we're set up is a constant competition where that you know decrease in productivity that would come with that is enough where it would give their competitors such a huge advantage over them
You
that they
don't
wouldn't stand a chance.
see the thing is, like, I agree with you. I agree, in that market principle, but you don't know that it'll decrease productivity. What if with that extra day off,
True, true,
people work 0.75 times harder? They have
true.
that much more energy. And that's what I was
And I know
saying.
there is
When
some
new
countries who've done that, right? Isn't there a few countries who have done that and
Yeah,
have
for sure.
seen
All
pretty
the good
positive results?
countries. Yeah, like
All the Nordic countries and all
all
that.
like the Nordic countries, yeah, who like
Yeah, yeah.
they have like the best standard of living. But let me jump in. You said switching to 4-day work weeks. I switched to 4-day work weeks like 2 weeks, like a week ago. I'm doing 4 10-hour shifts instead of 5 8-hour shifts. It is heaven, dude. It
Yeah, I
is
could see it.
it
And we
is
do that in
pure
construction
heaven.
too. In construction, it usually depends. Sometimes it's 5/8, sometimes it's 4/10s. Either way, it doesn't matter. If you're working with unions or you're working with like prevailing wages, they only want to pay their guys 40 hours a week anyway, because once you go over 40, say
It's
you
it's
work 41
OT.
hours a week,
Yeah.
now you're paying OT, so it's worth
Yeah.
more.
I
So
I
they don't
get
really
cut
care if
off.
it's
I
four
can't go
tens or
over
five
40.
eights.
Right.
Right, right. So I mean, so that's a good thing where at least if they do work overtime, it's kind of up to them and they can, get paid adequately for it. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not opposed to definitely, you know, I'm not opposed to working less hours. I'll tell you that. But when it comes down to how it gets done, I guess. So, I mean, using the Nordic countries as an example, is there a valuable case to be made? Say you were lobbying for this new thing where we say, okay, hourly workers are only, or not, I guess not hourly, salary workers are only allowed to work Monday through Thursday, um, with a mandatory 3-day weekend. Does the Nordic countries stand as a good example of here's what happened there,
It
and we can see
depends
all
on
the
what you're
positive
it
results?
depends what you're measuring it by. If you measure it by like like happiness rating, yeah, for people, yes. If you measure it
What if you measure it
by
by GDP?
GDP, maybe not. And that's the difference between our countries.
Well, so okay, so now this is where it gets interesting here because the the reason GDP matters a lot. Well, so I would almost, and like I said, I don't really, I'm not too well read on this topic, but I would almost argue that just based on those two stats alone, I would say that it might not have the same result here as it would there, because our GDP, or because our happiness level relies so heavily on our GDP as a country. Whereas if our GDP were to take a huge tank, say 20%, say,
I mean, that's
we
gonna
get
fuck
rid
up
of,
any economy, but whatever.
that's, yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it's almost, it's as if our economy is built on such a house of cards right now, where we have no choice but to continue to drive production in any way we can. Because if production stays the same, that's a very bad thing. If it has to go up, or wealth flees, our economy tanks. The way it's built is that
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
speculative.
and that's intrinsically flawed. You hear
It is. It
you
is.
see where that's intrinsically flawed, right?
Yes, I do. But the problem is that there's no real quick fix that I can think of, or I'm
There's
sure
not a
there might
quick
be.
fix.
I don't
No,
see a
and
solution. I don't see like a solution. I would like to try to find a solution, but I think that's one thing where you got the right and the left, or that's where they both kind of misalign, where it's like, the left are for the workers, the right are for the owners, where both people kind of see the other side of it. Oh, we're working, all the workers are working insane hours compared to these other countries, and it's this easy where we can just make it a 4-day work week, versus the guys on the right who are kind of saying, well, that's going to screw up the GDP, and then people on the left saying, well, who cares about GDP? It's more about people's happiness, and going back and forth with no one actually getting to the actual problem, which is, all right, happiness is obviously very important. GDP is obviously very important. Is there a potential solution where we would not have to sacrifice one for the other? And if we can reach that, that'd be great. But it's tough. It's complex. But that's what we're here for.
that is what we're here for. But a part of what you just were saying, I feel like they don't want to solve that problem. That problem is why they have jobs, like
Who?
the two political parties,
Okay,
the
okay.
politicians,
That's actually a great point too, is
that
that do they
that
actually
both
want a solution or do they want to keep pitting people against each other so that they can get,
right. They want to keep people arguing, keep people angry. They don't want cohesion. They don't want unison of the proletariat, of the working class, I feel like.
yeah, no, I mean, I definitely that I think that's true for sure. I mean, you can see it with all of the whether they want to separate you by racial identity or gender identity or whatever the identity is, all anything except for how about all of us just combine and go against them. Is it they make it seem like it's Republican versus Democrat when in reality, I mean, so there was one thing I can't remember where I read this, um, but there was something. It's going to bug me where I read this, but someone brought up a great point about how right after 2008, and then, 2009, 2010, you had a left wing group, Occupy Wall Street, all demanding this is all saying this is bullshit. No more bailouts for these billionaires and these banks. And then you had a pretty right wing group, the Tea Party, who were all gathering together and saying, "Hey, this is bullshit. No more bailouts for these billionaires and these banks." And then all of a sudden, after that, came a bunch of like identity politics, and it's like it is kind of crazy that there was a point where everyone was kind of saying the same thing, but then it immediately just got like, "All right, here you go.
Right.
Like whatever the issue of the day was. There you go,
Immigration. Yep,
abortion. Yeah,
right.
and yep,
Abortion, right.
it's yeah, they're just spoon feeding you, and it's
Uh-huh.
like, come on, man. And then with social media, obviously, it just gets expanded more and more and more and more hostile. It just never. It almost seems like there is no. Can you see any reality where the two sides actually do kind of come together? Other than the only one I can see is like another 9/11 scenario or something that's like catastrophic for everyone, where we have no
No,
choice.
it has to be something completely and utterly drastic. Um,
Because it's almost like we're living in alternative realities where if you look on, I mean, a lot of it's probably bots and all that, but looking on social media and it could be something as plain like just all right, that's clearly not right or something, and people can't even agree on the facts. Like there's plenty of examples. The Trump assassination attempt, it's I mean, there's nothing really political about yet you've got people who can't even agree on the fact that, oh, I don't believe he got shot. I think he set it up. Oh, well, I think the deep state set it up. And it's just constant arguing.
yeah,
COVID was
yeah,
another
yeah.
example.
It's like, oh, I think I it's like the two people talking. It's like, oh, it was a setup. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Donald Trump did it himself. No, no, the deep state left made it a setup. It's like you're so close to like being there. One thing I wanted to bring up, we are talking about identity politics versus, quote unquote, maybe real politics. The first one I heard, and we can get into it a lot on this one, but
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, how many economic platforms have you heard either candidate run on?
Yeah, it's very little. That's a good one actually.
The one that just came up was Kamala a few days ago talking about stopping price gouging, having like price
Okay.
limits. And
Actually, that's
everyone
a good one
got
to talk about.
super up in arms about that because they declared it pure communism straight away, that price caps don't work, you know.
So that reminds me too. Let's talk about that one for sure. And on top of that, there was only one other one I've heard from Kamala, which to be fair, I did not hear Kamala say it. I've just heard it from the media saying, "Oh, Kamala wants to tax unrealized capital gains," which I don't know if that's because I know they do that where they say,
Would
she
would
might
you be
not
in
have said
favor?
that
Would you be in favor of that?
of taxing unrealized capital gains.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I just don't get why someone like Elon Musk can have a fortune in stock and not have to pay taxes on it. But
Well,
but but he can borrow against that to acquire new businesses? Why does it count as an asset but not a taxable asset?
Well, it's taxable if he sells it. So if he were to
Right.
sell it,
But
that's
but but
a
but you
sales
can
tax.
borrow real money against it.
Yeah, you can borrow real money against it, but I mean that at the same time. So you're looking at Elon Musk, but at the same time, imagine someone who's middle class, like our parents, who bought a house before the say they bought a house in 2000, and it went up, $200,000 from 2000 to 2008. So in 2008, they had to pay $60,000 in unrealized capital gains tax. Whereas by 2009, not only did that 200,000 go away, but they also lost another. So they ended up losing money on it. Where how could they have been taxed on something that they didn't acquire? They didn't receive any money. There was no gains realized from it. That would be like me owning this
That
water
no, that's
bottle.
no, that's a good point. All right, how about we just do it on the top 1% then?
As far as okay, taxing unrealized capital gains, even for the 1%, I mean, by definition, you would be devaluating the asset. So if I own an asset because I expect it to appreciate in value, but I know I'm going to be taxed on it whether or not I sell it, I guess it comes down to that the money doesn't exist. How do I, because all right, when people say, all right, Elon is worth, say it's 100 billion. I don't know what it actually is, but he doesn't actually have $100 billion. He has an asset that the current buyer would buy for $100 billion. So when he looks at his asset value, all that really means is that there's someone out there who's willing to pay, or I mean, in this case, there's someone out there who's willing to pay a certain amount for a share, which if he were to sell all of the shares for that amount, he would have $100
No,
billion
no,
dollars.
no, right.
But that being said, if he were to actually sell all of the shares, then he would not sell them for $100 billion because there would now be a significant increase in the supply. So by selling his shares, he would devalue his own asset. And so he really doesn't have that money. He has an asset that's currently worth that. Where would if you were to tax that, where would that money come from?
All of the income from his business or, selling some of the stock. But I guess then if you sell the stock, then you're forcing yourself to
Right.
give
Then
up ownership, devalues your own company, as you said.
but, yeah, I mean, as far as taxing unrealized capital gains, I don't think that would make sense. The other one was the price gouging. So I guess all right, I didn't really see what the policy was on banning price gouging. I guess what even is
No.
price gouging and what
Well,
like what would really the
that's a great question, actually. I mean, price gouge. Well, so the one I saw, the one that sparked this discussion was essentially grocery stores possibly implementing fluctuating prices, right? Uh, on a hot day, they might charge more for ice cream, cold beverages, things like that, or when stock gets low on a certain item, they can like change it automatically with electronic price tags, like a dynamic pricing model. And I think that's a little fucked up, I think, just because it, if you can change like at any given rate, you can pay you're supposed to pay what the current market value for this item is, right? So I understand that if there's no ice cream left at the store, they should be allowed to charge more for it. But I think that's a slippery slope when you're pricing things on like things like essential goods and not like ice cream.
so all right, just because we had this conversation before, and just to be clear, so what we're talking about is if rather than having like a handwritten or printed off piece of paper on the shelf showing, this is the a handwritten price tag or a printed off price tag that they stick on the shelf next to the milk, say, or the eggs or the water, we're talking about having a digital screen showing the price that's connected to the internet in real time, so prices can change in real time. So if you're walking up
Right.
to to the shelf at the store, the price could be, $2.50, and as you're seeing it, you see it go up to $2.55, or it would basically look like you're looking at the price of a stock.
Right, exactly. And throughout the day, milk can go from 2.99 to 3.99, which that seems a little ridiculous. Have you ever been to like a shot bar that's kind of like this? Like,
I don't know.
so they're pretty popular in Europe. They always call like some like Wall Street bar or something like that, right? So they have the big electronic board of the current price of every shot, and then it just like kind of randomly changes every like 15 minutes.
Uh,
Something
no, I've
like
never been
that.
there.
It's kind of fun. It's like, oh, Jaeger bombs are $3 right now. Like let's
Yeah, yeah. They
like
start. Everyone starts going for him.
let's get them. But like that, I don't think they do that to make more money. They just do that. That's like the fun aspect of the bar. That's like
Yeah, right.
that's the
That's
marketing
the
ploy.
attraction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
No,
But
yeah, I see what you're saying.
it's
As
not
far as
it
if it
does
goes in like you're talking about like in like necessities, like in the grocery store, water and you know, milk and things like that. I I mean it so okay, so I guess the next question is should there be a should that be outlawed in some way? Or should it be, should the government step in to make sure that doesn't happen? I guess that's the question.
I don't know because, you know, milk costs us 2.99 today, say, right? If a month from now, uh, you know, there's a cow sickness, right? And like 10% of dairy cows die off. Milk's going to be more expensive. There's going to be less supply, right? They will change their price. They naturally have to change their price.
Right,
It's how the market works.
right,
It's a slippery slope then the other way and saying, all right, you can't change your prices in real time. All right, how often can you change your prices? Can you change your prices every day? Can you change your prices every week? Like at
right,
what
exactly. I mean, it's what they're already doing.
and this is lending credence to your side more than mine, right? I'm like, at what point, where do you draw the line then? All right, you can't change your prices during the day. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's day in, day out that it changes. Maybe, but that maybe that's not good enough for some people. It's like one day, that's it. It has to be at least 2 months. Some radical person might say, right?
Right. I guess
Two
why
months, like
is there a logical argument to as to why limit it at all? What is there a downside necessarily to having it where it is dynamic pricing, where by the minute it can change,
in a perfect
but
free market with perfect competition, absolutely not. But we are so far away from free market perfect competition. We are much, much, much closer to monopoly than perfect competition.
yeah, see now
It's
that's the
essentially
that's
in the
I was under the
oligopoly stage, wherein
one of the
when Kroger might implement fluctuating prices, what that means is 20% of grocery stores, 25%. That's huge. That's not, that's
that is huge, but
massive.
I mean, it is huge, but it's also, I mean, there's a reason. Okay, so there's a reason why they're not doing it now. Okay, they can already change their price by the day. Now they can change it by the second, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not that they couldn't price gouge, to use that term. It's not that they couldn't already do that now by the day. But if the understanding is that they can charge whatever they want and there's nothing we can do about it because it's an oligopoly or a monopoly, then they would already be charging $30 for milk. The ability to change it in real time, I don't see how that enables them to do anything more than they're already doing.
Kroger owns, I just looked it up. Guess what percentage of the retail food market in the US?
It is, I would say, if I were to guess, 30 to 35%.
It's 11.8%.
Okay. What's the
Walmart,
biggest one? Probably.
Walmart is the biggest, 17.1%.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's somewhat of an oligopoly, but it's not in the sense that it is okay. The reason why it's an oligopoly is because they charge such cheap prices. And if they
Yes,
were to
yes.
start doing that,
And they smoke all the non-established competition.
exactly. So if they were to start price
Which
gouging, all it would
me and you had this conversation. Sorry for cutting you off. Me and you had this
no, go
conversation
ahead.
maybe a year ago when I said, Richie, me and you go to the grocery store and I say cereal should not cost $4 a box. Let's start a cereal company. That is
Right.
not a realistic thing for me and you to be able to do.
Not me and you, but and this will get me to another thing where we were talking earlier about, we want to tax the billionaires, something like that. This is why it's good to have a lot of billionaires, a lot of hundred millionaires, because me and you can't, but anyone who has
$100
nine
million.
figures in capital
Yeah.
just has a new opportunity for market cap. So the fact that there is a lot of competition between markets, and that's one thing that the digital age actually helps with a lot. And I've got my own, I can go on that whole different topic about in the tech sector. But what it does help is what the capital necessary to start. I mean, look at Amazon. Amazon's a perfect example of a company that did not exist, what probably 30 years ago, or existed as a very small startup 30 years ago. And now, if Walmart started overcharging for their products, I can get those same products on Amazon. And
Hmm.
and those
Right.
products from Amazon are not coming from a big corporation. Not only can I get my products on Amazon, I can also sell my products on Amazon. So maybe milk's a bad example because it goes bad quick or something like that. But when it comes to clothes, why would I buy my clothes at Kohl's, say, or whatever the biggest clothes outlet is, when if they're going to start charging that much more than the clothing's actually worth, I could just go to some startup company on Amazon who's selling clothes cheaper. That's where I don't think there's products that anything that you can buy in a grocery store really. Those products are very difficult to monopolize, if not damn near impossible to monopolize, because they're not super hard to make. There's no real moats.
Maybe clothing items, I would agree, is a little harder to monopolize. Groceries, food is might be starting to get that way, dude. There's only so much fucking farmland. We have a
Right.
lot. We have maybe the
That's
most farmland in the entire goddamn world, and billionaires are buying it up by the acre. They want
that's true,
all of
but
the arable land.
is it not a good thing that they are? Because they can then produce these products for so much cheaper than we would be able to get them for if there were no billionaires and it was back in the 1800s or early 1900s where every business was a small business where they don't have the economies of scale where they can give us super cheap products at super cheap prices. If the alternative is having a bunch of small
No,
businesses
no,
where the price is going to go up anyway.
that's all well and good. Well, like looking forward hundreds of years is what society should be doing, right?
Okay.
We should be trying to build a better future. That is essentially our goal, and to, reproduce, pass on, the light of civilization. That's essentially the goal of mankind in a
Agreed.
to a certain extent, is to pass the
Yeah.
torch of civilization, to leave the world better than when you found it, right? I agree that having people with large scale capacity to mass produce things like food is a good thing. This is a much better thing than 300 years ago, when if your farm failed and the guy's farm next to you failed, you went without, right?
Right, right.
We're much better off than peasants 400 years ago. That being said, a couple hundred years from now, people can't like make a farm, like farm a farm megalopolis, a farm empire, right? Because all the farmland will be taken. There's a finite amount of resources for when I said earlier, the infinite growth model that we currently work under is not feasible.
So, okay. So, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. You're saying at this rate, eventually one person owns all the land
Maybe not one, but
or one group of
a
people.
few people own all the land, and then people 300 years from now cannot start a farm to like compete with them.
That's a fair concern is if, companies like BlackRock continue to buy up properties, drive up the property value, buy up land, keep driving it up. I mean, that's the I think it was Klaus Schwab, could be wrong on that, but it was one of the World Economic Forum things that came out over the last couple of years. The quote, you might have heard it in social media or wherever, that you will own nothing and be happy. Have you heard that
Yeah,
one?
of course. Yeah.
And that's kind of what they're referring to, is that everything, and that goes for everything as far as like
Think
even like
about your
cars.
music. Your music.
Right, right.
You don't
Music,
own your
cars.
music, Richie. You pay Spotify $12 a month to be able to borrow their music.
Right, exactly. And the artist doesn't own their albums, where they're not getting paid
Right,
per
right,
album sale. They're getting paid cents on the dollar per thousand streams or
right.
whatever it is.
For like
And same
million
thing with,
streams. Like,
yeah, I mean, and that's something that comes with not only land. I feel like land, the way I look at land is almost that was the capital of last of the last cycle. So like looking at the economies and I dabble in the stocks and I'm always trying to kind of figure this stuff out. And land almost seems like the capital of last time. And now I think the digital space is where most of the capital lines up, and it's your data and it's having network effects where
oh,
like one
I
wait,
totally agree.
go ahead.
I totally agree. Keep going.
And that's where so like back say it was 1995 and I'm Sam Walton and I think I've won capitalism. I got it because I have a huge mega store in every area where there's people and I'm dominating the market. And then all of a sudden in this digital age, now Amazon starts just smoking everybody. It's almost similar to back in the day when it was Rockefeller and Carnegie and all those guys who Rockefeller had all the perfect example is the trains, the railroads. And the thing about that was a monopolizable category because, like you said, land is also a monopolizable category because there is. So if I'm the company who built the railroad and I own the railroad that goes from the East Coast to the West Coast, who's going to compete with me? Are you going to build another railroad right next to mine? Because you'll
Mhm.
never be able to because you're not going to be able to make money off of it. I already have one here. So
Right.
that's like a monopolizable field. The thing about the tech, so when it comes to like products at Walmart and all that stuff, those could be hypothetically monopolizable. I could see the land argument, but I think now what we're looking at is monopolies in the tech sector, and that's because they have network effects. Where Facebook is somewhat of a monopoly because I can build another social media, but I've got to get all of my friends and family and everyone I know is all on Facebook, and so the other social media will never be as valuable as Facebook is because that's where it's worth nothing unless all the people I know are on there. And they're already on this one. So how are you gonna, you'd have to make one that's so much better that it convinces all 3 billion people on Facebook to switch over to this
Right.
other one.
All right. Now I have 3 points.
Okay, sorry, that was a long
That.
one. Go ahead.
You're good. You're good. Number one, land versus data. I like that a lot. You're saying data is the new meta build almost if you want to like become super rich fast, essentially is
Kind
kind of
of. Yep.
what I was thinking you were saying.
Yep.
Farming is still gonna be super valuable because you goddamn need food. It doesn't matter
Right.
how much
Yeah.
data you have.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't.
Like if you don't have a full belly. So I want to make that
You
point.
can't. You can't eat a podcast.
Exactly. Uh, Point number two, I'll save that one. Point number two, what was the last thing that you brought up?
I was mentioning
Oh,
the
Facebook,
network
Facebook.
effects.
It was
Hmm.
Facebook. Um, I actually think that one is something that could be disturbed because who do you know that's actually on Facebook? It's all old people, right? It's only
True.
old
True.
people. The old people die out. The kids are gonna pick up something new,
But they're
right?
all on Instagram.
What about TikTok?
Well, yeah, TikTok too. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Well,
You
that's okay.
if you
Good point. Good point.
I think that is a space that you can innovate in still. Like
Definitely. Yeah.
if you can build a better mousetrap, which is literally what TikTok and Facebook and Instagram is keeping you
Yeah, it is literally a mousetrap.
in a mind it's a mind trap instead of a mousetrap. If you
Yeah,
can
exactly.
it's the attention economy. If you can hold someone's
Yep.
attention for a fraction longer than your opponent can, you're in the gold. And
Right. That is
now
true. But okay, so sorry, but the thing about Facebook too is even with so here's the problem that we run into here, which is it's kind of like they call it like a flywheel or there's another word too, like kind of like a snowball effect where okay, so Facebook's been the number one for a while, but now TikTok is a emerging competitor. So TikTok, and then you notice, Instagram and Facebook now they have reels too, and it's all the same kind of,
yeah, right.
and
But they're
as it
not as
goes,
good.
but they will be. I would
Actually,
argue
I've
that they
heard
will be.
Instagram Reels kicks ass. I'm not
I
really
get
on
hooked
it.
on Instagram Reels. I'll be doom scrolling on there for
I
quite a while.
I uninstalled the Instagram app a while ago, and I've been a better person for it. TikTok
But
has my full undivided
I mean,
attention though.
here's the thing about TikTok is the fact that it's in China. Now I know there's politics to it. Oh, it's China spies, all this. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is yes, it's in China where they have access to way more people in the population of China than there are in the United States. Now that's how they were able to catch up so well. But here's the thing is that like we just talked about, the data is so valuable where Facebook has 3.6 billion, I think 3.6 billion accounts. I think there's like 1 point something billion active accounts. This is data coming in from 1.7 billion sources throughout all day, every day. Their data collection is going to be massive. And in order to catch up with them, you need to beat them by a lot because so say TikTok has more users than they do, okay, but they're also 8 years behind or however many, 15 years
Right.
behind when it comes to their data collection. So I would bet that so maybe not. TikTok's a good example, but the problem is it's almost impossible for anyone to be say it does become maybe two or three an oligopoly, Facebook, TikTok, whatever else. Now all of a sudden, there's no way I can start a new one now and get that amount of data when it comes to who has the best AI. Well, Facebook's going to beat me every time, and that's kind of what they do. Is when someone does come up with a new thing, they just figure it out and they do it themselves and they do it better.
And they
And,
figure
and
it out
TikTok is a
so fast.
so fast because they've got all their engineers and they've got all the data, so they can tell
Right.
right away if something works or not because they've got probably 500 million people online on their site right now who are inputting data into their algorithm. And so TikTok is actually a
Yeah,
very
that's
good example of someone as how it is possible, but it's very, I mean, I'd say that's more likely to be monopolized than, you know, because they can start, I mean, Facebook, they already have started. They can start really taking advantage of their, the moat that they have where they know you're not leaving. They know they got you hooked, whether it's Facebook or TikTok, either one or X.
brilliant. Uh, Next, this is the third point I was gonna make. Uh, have you seen the movie Ex Machina?
No, I have not.
All right, well, you gotta watch Ex Machina, but uh, essentially, what it's about, this guy brings in. It's a tech company. Essentially, it's kind of like Zuck. Picture Zuck, and he brings
Okay.
in some pretty low level data analyst, right? It's like, oh, you won the sweepstakes. You're gonna stay with me for a week in my like insane like cabin in the mountains. And he brings this guy in to basically do a Turing test on his AI robot that he built, right? But
Okay.
but I'm not gonna spoil the plot of that. Good movie, you should watch it. But the interesting part from that about the data is so he's basically Zuckerberg, right? He owns Facebook or whatever. And it's not Facebook, it's whatever social media they call it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Uh he's like, no one knew what they had. I was the person who figured out what social media actually gives you facial recognition data.
Yep.
Like he's like
Okay.
he's like we turn on all of the front facing cameras, facial recognition data, like user patterns. He took all of the information and like facial cues and shit that people had while they used his app, and he used that to build his AI essentially.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're doing. That's actually, I definitely got to check that out. That sounds awesome.
Yeah,
But
oh,
that is
it's
exactly
so
what they're
good.
doing. I mean, that's what when in tech right now, obviously AI is all the hype. There's a few different races going on for new technologies. The AI one, especially, it is. I mean, it is a race for the day. Like that's what it is. That's what social media is. Whether they knew that when they made it or not, I don't know that Zuck knew that what he made when he made it. But that is what it is. I mean, that's what your algorithm is.
I don't think
That's what.
Zuck knew what he made. You've seen the Social
No,
Network, obviously, right?
yeah, right. I don't think he did either, but I think
He's
he
like
does now.
they're meeting up with the one fucker who tells him drop just Facebook.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
meeting up with that guy, and he's like, you don't even know what this is yet. You can't put ads on it. Like right now, it's cool. It's like you can't be like defining this as something. We don't even know what this could be.
yeah, right. And that's what a lot of people would say too, is for forever, for a while, no one really knew what it was. And then you started hearing, oh, did you know they're collecting your data and selling it
Uh
to
huh.
ads?
Uh huh.
They're selling it to companies so they can give you ads. Oh, that's crazy that they're doing that. Okay, I hate to break it to you. Yeah, they're doing that, but more importantly, what they're doing with your data is they're creating AI. Like they're creating the most like insanely intelligent entity humanity has ever seen. And I mean, there's a book called How to Create a Brain, which describes it as literally it's a combination of all 1.7 billion people who are on there. It's a it's a combination of all of their brains that never forgets that, that
Have
it's
you heard of the technological singularity?
yes, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
super into all that.
As for and for the people listening, the technological singularity is essentially when we can create something that is smarter than us. Once the human brain is right now the most intelligent and complex thing in our known universe that we know of. If we can create something that is more intelligent than us, it skyrockets.
Hmm.
Technological advancement skyrockets
And we're
it
there. I mean, we're getting there.
because then it creates better versions of itself and it creates something smarter than it. And you don't know how insanely fast that could take off. It could wipe us out, and that's something we got to keep in mind with AI for sure.
And that's the problem. I think the one of the big problems when we're talking about, you mentioned earlier, looking forward 100 years in the future. I think a big problem that we're going to see is, and there's a lot of talk about this in like the with like in like the crypto spaces where you've got so the internet used to be a very open kind of decentralized place where you can get a web page and you can build it and people go on your web page. But it was hard to navigate. So Google took over the search engine. There was a big race, a bunch of different search engines. Google ended up being the main one. And then there was social media and Facebook ended up being the main one. Apple had the iPhone. That's how you get all these big tech giants here. The problem is that you don't own your data. Just like we were talking about how you don't own your music, you don't own your data. They own your data, and they're
Right.
using it to
And
build these
it's
machines.
and it's all
Once
stored away in the cloud somewhere.
when you say it's a big problem, when we reach the singularity and the singularity is owned by one person or two or three, if Facebook may create the most superior AI that anyone's ever seen, and they might be months ahead of the next guy who makes it. And by that point, give them
It's
months
over.
with
It's over.
AI.
Yeah.
Now that AI only takes a day to make the next biggest thing. Now they're years ahead. Now, and
Right. Right.
it's an exponential curve all the way up where
Right.
right. But yeah, that's a problem where that's a that's what we're facing right now, I think. And I think that's the big one when it comes to monopolies. There could be a monopoly over everything if one person gets to AI, gets to the singularity a decent amount of time before everyone else does, and they don't, and no one else has access to the data. Only they do, so no one else can compete with them.
So here's the question then. What someone reaches this technological singularity, what does it tell him to do?
True, yeah. What does it do? Well, I mean, the way it's made, it's a combination of all of its inputs. Which, say, if it's Zuckerberg, for example, it's a combination of the thoughts of every person.
Half a billion people.
Yeah, or probably more. And it's the obviously they have engineers weeding out the bad stuff and the good stuff, but who's to decide what's good? We get back down to like a fundamental problem of almost like religion where it's like, oh, just because the AI said so, is that right? Because
Right.
who knows
It's
who
so much smarter than us,
and it's
like,
also it's a
but then
black
it's
box. So
just
even
5 billion of us.
it's also they call it a black box because even the people who own it and are making it don't know why it comes to the conclusions it does because there's so many data points in there where like no group of humans, every human who's ever existed ever could all team up and try to make sense of all these data points and they would not be able to and but the AI can and so no one's able to
Yeah, yeah,
tell why it came up with that.
what if the AI says something insane? Like
Hmm.
like kill every single person named Philip.
Hmm.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that'll save us.
something
Yeah.
so arbitrarily insane like that. It's like what why do you think that? Like, do you think we need population control? Did whoever program you just have a bad breakup with some guy named
Yeah,
Philip?
yeah, right.
So every single Philip has to go now? Like,
There's also the problem. Elon has talked about this quite a few times, where he talks about where it is very literal, where there's almost a language problem where it doesn't under. It's not like AI actually understands what it's doing. It's just a data analyzer. And so if you were to try to program, say, like the example he gives is, yeah, it's like okay, yeah, we want to take we want to say 100 years in the future, I program my AI spaceship, and I probably just let's take my kids up to Mars, but I don't want them to be scared. So let's just like maximize the the chances that they're not scared.
Hmm.
And then the AI says, okay, kills the kids, brings them up to Mars, drops them there, and says, yeah, they weren't scared. And
Right.
so, it's like, or it could be like, yeah, we want to solve climate change. And it says, okay. And so it wipes out all humanity, something
Right.
like
Yeah.
that,
Right.
where
Right.
it's
It's
got to be very structured and, there's,
right. What if it says kill off 14% of the population?
yeah, to save the
It,
other ones. And then what do you do
is
there?
that the only solution? Like, what if it's right?
Yeah,
What if we have too many people and we will inevitably lose 90% of our population if we don't kill off 14%, right? Like
exactly.
that is ethics of like the highest degree right there.
Yeah. And we're facing it again. I mean, it almost is like things keep changing, but they stay the same where, that's like the problem of religion. That's what religion tried to solve, was to create like an ethical framework. And then there's
Right.
constitutions that try to create an ethical
Let's
framework, and then terms and conditions that try to create an ethical framework. And now it's like, all right, we're on this next thing that's trying to create an ethical framework, but
so
who
so
knows,
let's get specific on ethics.
Okay.
If the AI told you and you know that this AI is like insanely smart. Like, it's like so good. If the AI told you we have to kill 14% of the population, elsewise, I predict 90 to 95% will die in the next 100 years. Do you do it? You personally?
Yeah, see. Um, if I'm 100% sure that it's like it's being legit, I know that it's not like, no, it's not some bullshit. Like I know for
It's
sure that
smart. It's very, very smart. You don't know
it's
its
much smarter
intentions.
than me. Yeah, I
Much
don't.
smarter
Yeah,
than
that's the
you. You
thing.
don't know its intentions, but you know
Do
it's
I gotta
much
kill him?
smarter than you.
I've got to be the one to kill him, or can I just say like yes or no?
Yeah, I'd say in this situation, you're like the prime minister of Earth. We're like
Okay.
200 years from now, and we're one unified, globalized
I
society.
don't think I do it. No, I don't think I do it.
Wow, I think I'd do it. I'm a fucking
I say it's very tough. It's tough to
heartless,
say. It's the
heartless.
classic trolley problem
It
there.
is the classic trolley. But in
It's
this
tough.
one, we're basing it off AI. You're trusting in the AI.
Yeah, but it's kind of the same. I mean, you're still
Versus
just pulling a lever.
the trolley, you can literally see the
Yeah, true. That's a
ramifications in
good thing.
front of
Yeah,
you.
right.
There's an
Yeah.
unknown aspect in the AI
I
example
think the
I
I think
gave
the
you.
unknown aspect might be the one that tilts me towards the direction of I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
Well, hey, if I'm the president, that'll be we'll save it for 4 years. The next guy can deal with that problem if we have time.
yeah. It's like, yeah. 3 years ago, when I first came into office, this shit told me to kill off 14%
Yeah,
of the population. That's your decision now.
that's your first day. Get
Yeah,
inaugurated, walk in
yeah.
like, oh yeah, here we've got a couple of days left. And according to
But
this thing, we're all toast.
but by the way, I got a 9 a.m. tea time. But have fun with that.
Yeah, no, I'd probably pull that one. I'd push it
Hey,
off to the next
Richie,
guy.
that's why climate change hasn't been solved yet.
That is
Because
true.
because
That's and
everyone's
that's yeah,
everyone's like, dude, I gotta get reelected in 4 years. Like, I'm not gonna solve climate change right now. Like, I just gotta get reelected. So
yeah.
no forward thinking. And that's the problem.
That's
Is
pretty much that's a lot of
politics
problems.
politics is literally like 6 months future planning. It's not 100 years. It's not 50 years. 10 years. I would take 10 years.
No, it's yeah, especially now with the constant news cycles. It's literally just trying to get good press for the next, couple months. But that so we've got 5 minutes left. That brings me another point. Actually, it lines up perfectly. I was thinking about this today. I wanted to bring it up. I saw there was something that whether it's Kamala or some Democrat think tank or whatever, is talking about putting terms, giving Supreme Court justices terms rather than having them appointed for
For
life
life.
or for an indefinite amount of
What do you
time.
think
What do you
about
think
that?
about that?
Oh,
Well, I'm
you're asking
opposed
me. I
to it.
like it. I
I'm
love it.
opposed to it.
I love it.
So the reason I'm opposed to it is because I think that the way I think the reason I think that it's counter to exactly what you're talking about right now is that if you have terms, you're incentivized to do the right thing that will help you get reelected or that will help
No,
you look good during
what
your
about
term.
no elections?
Just to
There's no
get
there's no
appointed.
elections for Supreme Court right now.
True. Yeah, so you get appointed, but you're only appointed for a certain amount of time. I mean, the other thing on that is that part of it is it's designed for gridlock
Right.
to kind of, like basically if there's going to be any idea that's super revolutionary or, anti-constitutional or a massive change, um, it's it's probably not going to happen in a couple years because the people who are on the Supreme Court have been there for 30 years and they still don't believe in that.
The court
But
system
then
is
it's designed to move very, very slowly, I think. And that's a feature, not a bug.
the court system is designed, like you just ended with, to work on the principle of stare decisis. Let past decisions stay.
Hmm.
Their job, the court is supposed to look when you get arrested. The court is supposed to look at, all right, say you're totally guilty, murder. All right, what do we do with murderers before? We gave them 20 years to life, right? It's the court system is designed to keep things the way that they are, like to, and that's a good thing in a way, because you don't want some guy getting 4 years for murder and some guy getting 40 years for murder. And
Hmm.
if the courts ruled, that you can't yell fire in a crowded room or whatever, that shouldn't change very much. It should only change when it's something revolutionary and big.
Right, which we're running into a lot of these revolutionary big things where that does become a good debate is how revolutionary does the thing have to be to, you know what I'm saying? There's levels to things, there's level to like precedents where, the Constitution and the branches of government, they've set that precedent that was designed to stay over time, where it was designed no matter what the situation is, these checks and balances should work out and this type of thing should work. But you got to think eventually you get to a point where the revolution is so big. I mean, we're on the AI and the internet and social media. These are like the printing press and the railroad. These are huge
Yes.
technologies where they are changing the very landscape of how we live. And how big is too big where all of a sudden those past rules and you know regulations that we all thought were pretty much going to last forever, well, maybe they don't work anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And there is absolutely that element of you need consistency. You like
Yeah, right,
you
right.
can't be changing your opinions on things every 4 years. Elsewise, what does your word mean?
Hmm. Yeah, especially as a large country where we're all, the rules are basic, the rules of a
Rules
game.
are
So
what we say they are, almost.
we, but we can't be expecting rules to be massively changing in 4 years because then it's, I don't know. There's a kind of a moral hazard there where there's a misalignment of, when you look at the billionaires and we've got about 30 seconds left, so we could leave off here. But when you look at the real rich guys who are running everything, it's like, all right, if they're expecting, the rules to change in 4 years, why would they not just hoard all their money until 4 years comes and say Trump's back and then boom, there's
Right,
got to be like some type of rigid deal. But
right. All right,
but all right. Yeah, let's wrap it up here and then should we pick back up on this topic next week?
maybe.
All right. Sounds good.
Viewers will have to tune in to find out.
All right.